welcome to this, as Alvaro's done, welcome to this, our fourth webinar. Isn't time flying when you're locked up at home? But thankfully, that is all going to change. And in our first session this morning, we want to talk specifically about the retail sector and the impact that COVID has had. We know because footfall in the city centre has dropped to over 85% of what it has been year on year, although it is starting to increase slowly. And from next Monday, the 15th, we will see a larger number of retailers opening their doors, but retail will be different. So this morning, this afternoon, should I say, we have Jennina, as Alvaro said, and James. Jennina, who chairs our Retail and Leisure bid, and James Gibbons, who's the store manager at Marks & Spencer's on Church Street. And if I can come to you, first of all, James. James, you have been operating throughout the COVID period, obviously with your food court. How has that been for you?
Yes, so you're right, Bill. We've been operating right throughout with our food hall and a small essentials in shop within our business. And it's been a whole new learning experience, clearly, with unprecedented times that we've been through. But we've been very pleased with how we've continued to operate through that period. We've had some fantastic feedback from customers around the fact that we've still been open. We've still had great availability across most of our food product range, and within that we've been able to take advantages of new opportunities too. For example, introducing the Deliveroo service as part of our business range too, to give customers another alternative way of shopping with us. We've seen various levels of footfall through the period. Certainly when lockdown first hit us, then obviously we were heavily impacted. However, initially and since then, we've gradually seen more and more customers returning to us, and in particular are very now enthusiastic about our reopening on the 15th, where we will be reopening all our 3 trading floors with a complete offer other than the cafe. So it's been very interesting, very challenging, and certainly our teams have pulled out all the stops. Our team of colleagues around continuing to deliver the operation as we've been able to do it. We've implemented obviously consistent social distancing measures to give our customers the absolute confidence that in what we're doing around hygiene, as I say, social distancing, the whole payment process, etc. I don't know where the time's gone. It seems to have flown through this period, right the way through. But as I say, we're all now firmly focused on what the next week and the next few weeks are going to bring us in terms of that return to a larger business, put it that way. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Jennina, Metquarter has been different to that because Metquarter closed for quite a considerable period of time. Retailers are starting to open up, and over 200 degrees coffee has reopened for takeaways. But how has the experience been for the Metquarter and all of your traders?
I think in many ways similar to James, whilst we've been closed where James and Marks and Spencer's have actually been open, we've had to adapt in terms of having non-essential stores, but we have actually got people that run their internet business from our site. So for them, in many ways, they've been business as usual in terms of accessing buildings and deliveries and DPD collections. So we've had to look at almost from day one of lockdown, the social measures we need to put in place to maintain primarily the safety of our actual on-site team, who've done a fantastic job of keeping the building secure, safe, and picking additional responsibilities that would not have never formed part of their original roles. With our security teams, our control officers have been doing the deep cleans in the building. Initially from day one, so we bring our furloughed housekeeping staff back. It's given us time, but as James mentioned, time flies very, very quickly the last 12 weeks. We're all mixed upon our days and hours and mornings and afternoons. But it's given us time to really refine the processes and procedures that we need to put in place and pull on the experience from our colleagues across the city and also part of our wider portfolio in Savills. It's allowed us to really look at kind of what measures we can put in place to really rethink flow around the building. We are quite a condensed building in terms of our operation, and just looking in terms of all the measures and trying out some of those measures prior to opening for customers to make sure it's as safe as it possibly can be. I mean, it's definitely going to be a different retail experience when we open our doors. And, it's important that people understand that and that they're patient and take responsibility for their own actions. we want to work together, but it's going to be very agile and dynamic in terms of looking at what happens on a sort of, hourly basis in the first few days and weeks, just to kind of see how we can best support everybody.
So thanks Jennina for that. Obviously I'll come back to you in a minute if I can talk about some of the other elements of Metquarter, because you're not just at retail, you are a retail but also a leisure destination, and we'll come back to that. But if we come to talk about the 15th itself, James, what will we expect to see from Monday in the city centre?
Okay, well, as far as we're concerned, as I mentioned there, we'll have all of our 3 trading floors open. So that's the food hall, the ground floor, clothing and home, first floor and second floor, clothing and home as well too. We'll be offering the full our product range that we sit within. We're working very differently at the moment. While our food hall was open, we were working on a capacity of around 60 customers on that food hall at any point in time. As from Monday, we will be opening our doors to 250 customers. That will be the limit we work to initially. We will be trialling that, which is based on sort of our own corporate view and guidance as to what we can accommodate within our store. We have introduced various different measures across the store, because clearly our tilling operation has had to increase. So our queuing measures, our screens at till points, and our whole process of movement around the store will be very much guiding customers and looking for them to work with us in terms of taking responsibility for trying to maintain and maintaining that distancing. We have, thankfully, working with you guys from BID, been able to get our outside queuing system now in place, because we're certainly hopeful, and certainly the feedback I'm getting from customers is they can't wait to get back in shop with us back on full operation, is that we will have queuing, we will be queuing outside, and therefore we've got those measures in place to deal with that. We will have a host on our main doors all the time, guiding customers, and hosts within the store as well to guide customers around and on their journey. We hope our customers won't be too disappointed that our cafe isn't still open at this point in time, but hopefully they will understand the constraints that go with that just at the moment. But we're just very much looking forward to giving customers that full operation. We have brought a number of staff back off furlough leave. I have had over 2/3 of the workforce here out on furlough, but we are bringing a number of staff back as we speak, and have been through this week, to help ensure that the service our customers receive is also of the standard they would expect from us as they come through the doors. And as I say, the feedback we're getting at the moment is customers can't wait, so we're really looking forward to getting the doors open on Monday morning, and really being able to offer something far closer to what we're traditionally known for.
Yeah. Will changing rooms be open?
Yeah, it's a good point. That's a good point, Bill, to be fair. No, changing rooms won't be open at the moment. So no, that won't be the case. Yeah, unfortunately. However, we are offering a more than our usual generous returns policy of 90 days on all products, and that will continue to allow customers the opportunity to purchase from us, and if things are not correct, that bit more time to return as they need to.
Okay, thanks for that. Jennina, if we could just ask you about the Metquarter in general. So your retailers will be open from Monday.
Yeah, we've got a number of retailers. I think at the moment we're up to about 9 retailers that have confirmed that they will be open from the 15th of June.
And so will you have queuing outside the Metquarter, or queuing within the Metquarter into each of the units?
We've made provision for both, because of the way that the stores are actually phasing their return to operation. We are hopefully confident, but again working with the City Council and BID, that we can accommodate queues internally with our anchor tenants on the front of Whitechapel on an external basis if required. But all those stores, like James has said, have gone into great detail in their risk assessments to make sure they can fully understand what numbers they can accommodate within that space. We have stores up to 15,000 square foot and some at 300 square foot, so it's going to be a real challenge. We've got some space on the upper level which we're currently remodelling, which allows us additional space to queue. But again, we are just taking on a sort of an hourly basis. Management will be in place to look and kind of see how numbers are looking, and if we need to look at how we restrict entry, then we can.
Excellent. Now, retail is one thing, but the Metquarter is known for its great leisure, and we've all come to love the Everyman Cinema. The big question: when will the Everyman be open? When will we be able to come and sit and watch a blockbuster?
Well, hopefully soon. Unfortunately, our cinema and a leisure offer in terms of Everyman Cinema falls into a category that hasn't actually had government guidance on when they can open. Like I'm sure other leisure businesses are, they're working really hard behind the scenes to look at options of how best to accommodate the COVID-19 regulations and how that sits within a cinema context, and particularly within a boutique cinema context. So we're working really closely with them to enable them, as and when we get that government guidance, to then be able to kind of get back to what they do best, and let us have food and drinks at our table while we're watching a great blockbuster.
Did we notice some good news about Metquarter with a new tenant announced?
We did, although I don't know whether I'm officially meant to talk about it, but yeah, it's if you want to go onto any Google platform, you'll be able to put in sort of 3 letters and Metquarter, and it should hopefully give you some good news. We're working really hard behind the scenes. It's another complication because we're going to have around about 80 contractors on site on a daily basis under COVID-19 regulations, but we hope to be able to, early July, be able to really go to town in terms of that announcement, and it's a major development for the city as well as us, so we're really pleased.
It's great. We're looking forward to that. And for the retail aspect of the city opening up on the June the 15th, next Monday, we have launched this morning Love Your Liverpool, and that's the website. And those of you who have been in the city centre may see some of the signage. It's on social media now. The Love Your Liverpool campaign is a campaign that's been developed between Liverpool Big Company, Liverpool One, Royal Albert Dock, and Liverpool City Council, and is the overarching message for the city. Love your Liverpool, but within that, Alvaro is just sharing it now on the chat at the bottom, is also be patient, be kind, and be responsible. And you will see on that webpage a list of frequently asked questions. Please do go to that. If anybody's unsure about it, please do come back on any of those points. But I think from a retail point of view, we will keep you updated on that. From Monday, we are anticipating a larger number of people coming to the city, and we will measure that because it's very important that we do all of this on a measured basis, because the last thing any of us want to see is any spikes in our numbers, any talk of a second wave of COVID-19. And that's why all of these measures are in place. But if I can direct you to that, and if I can hand across now to Chris for the second part of this webinar this afternoon, and then there is an opportunity for Q&A later. But thanks for that. Thank you, James and Jennina.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bill, and good afternoon to everyone. There's really interesting insights there for the reopening of the retail sector next week. Hopefully the hospitality and tourism sector will follow close behind you in the beginning of July, subject to our friends in government giving us a clear steer. So this session we're going to have a look at now is really important. You know, attractions are a very important dynamic and part of the Liverpool offer. So we're delighted that we've got Steve Mills, who I'll hand over to in a second, from Decision House, who does a lot of work with ALVA, the Association of Leading Visit Attractions, and then 2 real experts in the world of attractions, Paul Smith from the great Anglican Cathedral, and Tom Cassidy, who runs the Stadium Tours and Museum at Anfield, which again another successful venture in its own right. So Steve, maybe let's start with yourself, because I know you've been doing some interesting insights and intelligence around, you know, sentiment that people have around attractions. So can you share some of the headlines of that in terms of what it means at a national level, and then how we can try to adapt it to Liverpool?
Sure, yeah, perfect. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so as Chris said, I've been doing some sentiment research among the attractions visiting public across the UK on behalf of the Association of Leading Visitor Attractions. And the aim of that really is to give them some insights that will help attractions understand the kind of hopes and fears of potential visitors, so that attractions can understand how to build that crucial trust and confidence in the marketplace. So attractions they've been using that to really decide how to physically present themselves after reopening. So things like what safety measures are going to resonate with the public, what facilities that people are anxious about, for example. But they've also been using it to inform the kind of critical communications measures that that attractions should put out to build confidence and then to really kind of capture that public mood. So although the other thing I'd say is, although that this research is specific to attractions, it's also relevant to businesses in the wider visitor economy as well, to be honest. I think a lot of those principles will apply right across the board. We've done a couple of waves of the work so far. There's a third wave that's in progress as we speak that's being presented next week. So I just thought I'd try and pull together some insights from that first wave. So I think the first thing to set out really is, at the moment, the market is really highly cautious, especially towards indoor attractions. I think the important thing to get across is that the majority of the public are really waiting to see how well attractions handle that reopening phase before committing to visits. Now, inevitably, some of the attractions, you know, they're going to see an immediate spike quickly as those ones who are more confident come back. But then it's after that point really that it really becomes critical. So I think it's really vital, with that in mind, that attractions absolutely get it right first time, because I think from what we've seen, about half of the attractions visiting public out there are sitting tight and waiting for those first few days and weeks of operation before they jump. So it's a really critical time to make sure we get it right. And the key factor in getting it right in the eyes of visitors is, to be honest, all around distancing, however you define it. So it's about how well we're perceived to deal with the fears over crowds and our ability to both implement distancing, but also, really importantly, it's about policing those distancing measures as well. Lots of the feedback we had through this research was, yeah, it's fine to have all these measures in place, but we have to be able to confidently see that it's happening on a day-to-day basis. So we've seen just kind of lots of feedback from supermarket experiences, for example, of people saying, well, actually, I trust all the staff to do their job well, implement those safety measures, but I'm less trusting of the fellow people that are around me. And that really applies, I think, to visitor attractions, and I'm sure it'll apply across the wider visitor economy as well. So anything we can do to demonstrate that this is working would be really useful. But having said that, one thing we've got to be careful of across the visitor economy is that we don't police the visit experience to death. One thing we absolutely need to remember is that people are coming here for an experience. So it should be, as Alva have come out with a great phrase here, it should be a sanitized attraction, but not a sanitized experience. And I think it's really important to remember that. And in the early days of some of the outdoor attractions opening, I think one thing that we're finding is that the motivations of visitors are changing a little bit. And right now, the evidence is anecdotally that people are coming to get away from reality a little bit. So we've got to be careful that all these measures that we have in place aren't completely rammed down people's throats straight away. And we need to remember that, you know, the core reasons why people come to these places. That said, people are concerned pre-visit that there are safety measures in place. So we've also seen a large uptake in, or a large increase in people visiting people's website, the attractions websites in advance to check that these safety measures are in place. And we've seen, for example, within the sector, that there is a Visit Britain charter mark that's in development, and we've seen some really high levels of confidence, if you like, in that charter mark. So we've found that about half the market feel that it would give them that extra confidence they needed to visit. So I think that's going to be really important to buy into that charter mark. There are some specific facilities that people feel more anxious about. So obviously, as always, it's toilets. I've had some anecdotal feedback talking to attractions this week that the biggest question that they have pre-visit is, are your toilets open, and what measures have you got in place for toilets? Indoor cafes as well, people concerned about, and also the whole interactive exhibits side of things, people are anxious about as well. So, the other thing that we've really found is there's an increasing difference in confidence between outdoor and indoor attractions. That gap in confidence is growing, so much stronger confidence about visiting outdoor attractions, and much more anxiety around indoor attractions. And that gap, as I said, is, if anything, is getting bigger at the moment. So anything you can do to move anything you've got outside is no doubt going to help. One of the other things we found is an insight really, is that the visitor-facing staff can really have a hugely positive impact, particularly obviously on entrance. And I'm reassured that from what James said earlier about having a host on the entrance, I think is fundamentally important, particularly at attractions, but again, I think across the whole visitor economy, because that entrance is going to set the whole tone for the rest of the experience. And if you're seen to get it right at that point, then I think that enables visitors to suddenly feel comfortable and then go and enjoy the visit experience as they were, intending to in the first place. So the role of staff at that entrance is more important than ever. So providing that warm welcome, showing patience. I think Jennina mentioned about patience earlier. I think it's patience for not just from visitors, but from staff as well. And that's a new skill set that perhaps some staff aren't going to be used to. So it's getting that balance between proactive management of safety measures with still delivering those great experiences. 2 or 3 more things. There is concern, frankly, around using public transport. No doubt about that whatsoever. City centre attractions that have limited parking are going to find it quite difficult, frankly. And we're still tracking public transport because we think that's obviously one of those things that hopefully people are going to grow in confidence as people start using it again. So we're tracking that over time. We're also finding that in terms of pricing, that visitors aren't really expecting blanket pricing discounts across the board at all. If anything, people are feeling fairly altruistic at the moment. People understand that organisations, companies within the visitor economy have all struggled throughout this period. So they're feeling fairly altruistic, particularly members and families and younger people. Actually, we found that are feeling particularly altruistic, and some of them are just expecting to pay more on reopening. So there's no need to rush out and massively discount. That said, clearly, if you've part of your offer is closed for whatever reason, then you may need to reflect that in your admissions pricing, clearly. I think the final thing really to say is about pre-visit communications. Now, clearly, that's going to be vital to support those on-site actions. One thing that's come out quite strongly here is the trend for virtual online visits can potentially be used here. So I said earlier about there's been a really strong increase in visits to websites pre-visit to perhaps get that reassurance from the attraction that these measures are in place. So lots of attractions are beginning to put in videos that are demonstrating their distancing measures, their cleanliness measures, and I think they have been really important in gaining that, building that confidence among the public. And if you can go further than that, even to demonstrate how it's working live, I think that would be perfect. I mean, I know it's difficult and you get into kind of privacy issues with all that sort of thing, but I suspect there's going to be people who are looking at the website in the morning saying, what's it like today? How busy is it? Is it working? And they will be making a decision at that point. So whatever you can do then. And any messaging around trying to create physical perceptions of physical open spaces. And I think that applies to indoor as well as outdoor attractions as well. That's clearly going to help. I think the final thing I want to say really is kind of almost a message from Alva. They're using the message, a kind of clear strap line about protect, respect, enjoy. So it's about protect yourself and others. It's about respecting the rules and guidance. So this thing about helping the public to trust other visitors. And then finally, enjoy yourself and enjoy your visit. So let's not forget that kind of core reason why people are visiting attractions and other elements of the visitor economy as well. So that's just sharing some of the insights that come out of the first couple of waves. As I said, there's another wave that's going on at the moment. That's I think there's a webinar next Friday to report back on that one.
Okay, Steve, that's some really interesting insights there, and I think probably what that is underpinning is that whole world of confidence, isn't it? That we need to build confidence with consumers in order to create future demand, and it chimes very much with the recent visitor survey that we undertook with local residents. That showed this really high pent-up demand to want to come back in. Over 80% wanted to get back into enjoying the offer of the city centre, but well over 50% of that number also very cautious, want a surety that effective safety measures are in place, want to know that businesses are taking the right steps. And that's why I do think that the retail sector reopening next week will set a good parameter, good barometer for that in terms of building that confidence, which we hope can move into the visitor economy in July. But maybe if I turn to yourself, Paul, just as a few things, I think probably just your reflection on what Steve's talking about there in terms of how that aligns with your own thinking within the Cathedral, and then a little bit about, how's it been for the Cathedral? It's it's such an iconic building in the city, not only for events, but also for its core religious purposes. And how are you sort of beginning to put together your plans and thoughts about, the reopening of the Cathedral?
Well, firstly, what I'd like to say is that the stuff that's come out from Steve and from Alva and from Marketing Liverpool and from various other kind of sources over recent weeks has been absolutely invaluable for anyone who's working in a visitor attraction, because that was the hardest thing for us, was to understand what the future looks like. It's a very, very different future from what we've been used to. And we've kind of been developing a strategy over recent years, which is about kind of bringing as many people to the Cathedral as we can. And we've been open 365 days a year. We've been open from 8 till 6 in the morning. We've created some pieces of work over the last couple of years, which have been about bringing very, very large numbers of people at any one time. And that's never been a kind of something where people had to book. So it's, we talked a lot about build back. For us, it's we're kind of creating something quite different from what we had before. So we're building back to something that we've never had before, really. It's a very, very different kind of world for us. So I think a lot of the stuff that Alva said around people taking confidence in kind of something that's more bookable has really resonated with us. It's not something we've ever done before, but we understand that people want to feel as if when they get to a visitor attraction, they're not going to be crowded out and there will be proper social distancing. So when we reopen, we will have a bookable experience, which we've never done before. So we have an Eventbrite platform that we use for some of our events, and we will be asking our visitors to book for the first time. And I think we're kind of hoping that they will go with it, because I think there's an understanding that we're doing it for safety reasons. We're not doing it to be difficult. We're doing it because we realise, actually, in December, for instance, we get 100,000 people come through our doors in December. Over the summer, we get probably about 20,000 people a week normally. We couldn't do that in this socially distanced world. So we have to have something that's more bookable than we've had before. It's just it's a very, very different world from the one that we've been used to. But I think we are going to do a lot of taking a lot of the advice from Steve, actually, that we're going to have we'll have someone on the door. We'll have giving people a sense of what they're expecting, how it'll be different. We'll do that prior to the visit as well. So we'll have a virtual tour up from early July. We'll have we'll do a walkthrough, which will be available on our social media channels, so people will be aware of what they're going to get. There'll also be a much smaller kind of fixed number of places for people to be able to book into the Cathedral. So, ordinarily you can get about 3,000 people into the Cathedral, but I think we're talking a fraction of that when we reopen in July. Our reopening is going to be a slightly interesting one, because we've got an opening of the Lady Chapel next week for private prayer, which is something the government's just announced in the last few days. We've had to deal with the information coming out quite late. So we've got a reopening of the Lady Chapel next week again, it would be bookable via Eventbrite, half an hour slots. So we're operating in a very, very different world from the one we worked in before. But I think it's something we're kind of gradually getting our heads around.
Okay, Paul, that's great. I'll come back to one or two things there in a second. But now, Tom, in addition to what's been happening on the football field, you've built a very strong offer there with the museum and the tour there. It's grown from strength to strength. You've added to it, and I presume you were looking forward, or are looking forward to adding a Premier League trophy into that tour shortly. So in the same sort of vein, I mean, in terms of how you've kind of been coping with these challenges that we've had, how you're preparing to go forward, listening to what Steve and Paul do, and what's your take on it from an LFC tour experience perspective?
Yeah, I mean, hello everybody. So we have hit a bit of a wall initially because we were on such a high trajectory and growth. Last year we had our record visitor numbers. To put it into perspective, about last August, you know, there were some days where we had over 3,500 people through. This year we're limiting that, opening from August the 1st, and our maximum numbers will be 750. About 60% of people already book in advance, but it'll be only advance booking. So we're limiting visitor numbers. We've done a risk assessment on each part of our stadium tour, which is the core products. So how many we can safely get through in reception, where there are any pinch points on the route as well, kind of how many we can get through there. So we're looking at 750 over the day, which is a vast reduction from where we were previously. We're doing online pre-bookings only, so falling in line with the industry standard, but we already had those booking systems there. The increased hygiene and safety measures along the tour routes, so dedicated on-site cleaner from when we open until after we close, hand sanitizer stations throughout the tour routes, extensive health and safety training for staff to safely open with COVID-19. We're operating at a one-way flow as well, so nobody at any point when they visit us should double back onto anybody. Now, that means that we've invested in a lot more staff. Even though our numbers are down, it's really important that we get this right. We've opened up a new exit, so again, it just means that people aren't going to double back. We are still going to be using, everybody gets a multimedia device, which we have about 1,500 of them on site. We are using them. There's going to be a disinfection, so pure sanitization from customer A back to us, and then whenever it gets to customer B. Everybody gets the takeaway earbuds, which are branded, which is that was always there, but that's a very kind of safe measure for people to use. And on the devices, so we are working with our developers on this. So I think Steve mentioned before about the safe distancing. So we hope when we launch to have an alert if anybody is within 2 meters. So that might sound a bit severe, but again, it's all about peace of mind, and we're working on that. Hopefully, it is in place for launch. And just, I think Steve mentioned before, the flexible cancellation policy. I think all of them, all of them are really important. In terms of how we open, our market has completely changed. So, being a very international brand and lots of interest from visitors to the city region, we deliver what we do in 12 languages. I'd imagine the majority of these over the next 12 months will be in English or in Scouse. We have very large spaces at Anfield, so the tour probably takes about 2 hours, maybe longer, on average. So we go right up across our new main stand, we drop down and then come back, and then we take people out into the stadium. So we're very confident that we're going to be able to reassure people that either you're outside or you are within big spaces inside as well. We're also launching an external guided tour of the stadium, which will drop people into the Kop. So there's always been a lot of things to see and do. There's 2 reasons for that. Firstly, there's the tick to the outdoor space. And then secondly, there's the capacity issues as well. We can't just sit back and say, we were at 3,500 a day on a busy days in August last year. Well, it's just going to be 750, so we're looking at what we can do in the outdoor space. And look, it's a very new build. It's a very interesting space, and it will finish coming into the stadium and into the museum as well. And we're looking at others. So we're looking to be as creative as we can. One of the things that discussion that we are having at the moment, although it's a 9-month build, is potentially doing something engaging and exciting on the roof of the main stand. If only that was in place this year, because again, it ticks all the boxes that we've just been talking about there. So I think that they're the main, they're the main things that we're doing at Liverpool Football Club.
Okay, Tom, thanks very much. And I think there is an opportunity there, I think, isn't there, over the next weeks and months to get out to our local audiences and our local residents who perhaps sometimes, you always think this kind of adage about you don't really know what's on your own doorstep, and there's a great opportunity there to be able to get local residents to explore and see the great attractions and facilities.
But I think on that as well, Chris, I think ourselves and every other attraction out there, we've just got to slightly reposition and redo and change the messaging as well. The messaging that's been in place for the last few years, attracting visitors to the city. The product needs to tweak, the messaging needs to tweak, and the position of it as well. How we acquire these, the locals to come in and to love their city, I think is really important.
Okay, so maybe just one question for all of you, and then I'll hand back to Bill. But there's a lot of debate, and Steve, I'll start with you on this one, but I'll take a view from Paul and Tom as well around this whole, what the differences would be if the social distancing changed from 2 meters to 1 meter, what the impact would be. We know for a lot in the hospitality sector, this is a big topic for them, particularly in terms of the viability and the commerciality. What's the view from the attractions world on that particular subject, which is quite hot at the moment?
Yeah, it's one of the things that Alva are pushing hardest, is to reduce that 2 meter rule. For obvious reasons, I guess. Whether it applies to the attraction itself or the cafe or the shop or whatever, it runs through absolutely everything that they do. It's their main lobbying point at the moment. Yeah.
And then maybe Paul will talk. Come to you first, Paul. In terms of if there was a change in that, what difference do you think it would make to your future thinking, future modelling in terms of the reopening of the cathedral?
Well, I think like a lot of visitor attractions, the move from 2 meters to 1 meter would be quite profound for us, because obviously it would mean that we could have more people through our doors, but also I think the cafes that we've got can reopen. We're not quite sure how they can reopen at the moment. Certainly the mezzanine cafe is quite a small space, so kind of being able to social distance at 2 meters is nigh on impossible in that space. It's easier in the Wellsford restaurant, but it would make our lives significantly easier to trade if it was at 1 meter. I mean, similarly with the tower experience, which is a significant part of our revenue, if we were to move from 2 meters to 1 meter, that would make that more of a viable proposition. I think the difficulty is a lot of visitor attractions can operate on a much reduced number, but operating on a much reduced number means that they're not profitable anymore. So, I mean, a lot of those businesses are based upon a certain fixed number of people coming through. At a certain point, you kind of hit profitability, but you don't if you've got to kind of reduce by 3/4 the numbers that come through. And I think, obviously health is and safety is the most important thing in all of this. So we'll take the government's advice, but it would be, if the government's advice does change more in line with WHO and certain other countries, then that would be hugely helpful for us.
Okay. And Tom, what difference would it make to your 750?
So our plan is to run that. So we're working at just 125 people an hour during August. We could safely do it at 2 meter distances, 190 per hour. So our plan initially is to do that in September. So, and then we can scale it up, as we go through. I mean, again, those figures, they're vastly different from where we were before. I mean, I think one of the things that we're going to be looking to do, if the demand is there, is do some out of hours trading as well. Do more than maybe we would normally do. Kind of what time does the light go down? So yeah, I think from 125 up to 190, we think we can safely do, and maybe we can almost double that again per hour to kind of 350, 375, if it reaches down to 1 meter.
Okay. Thanks very much to Paul, Tom, and Steve. I think I hand back to you, Bill, knowing that two of our leading attractions are well ahead of the game. We're getting prepared, and certainly I think we're going to give that confidence to anybody that goes to either of those attractions in time. And Steve, your insights were immensely valuable in terms of putting that in context. So back to you, Bill.
Thanks for that, Chris. A very helpful session. I know we have a number of questions, which if I can direct some of those questions, particularly if I come back to Tom, there's a question about the announcement that the expansion of Anfield Road has been delayed by a minimum. I had noticed that. But has the possibility of building an Anfield Road station moved even further away? Is that, I mean, clearly, I know it's not specifically within your domain, but anything general you can respond to on that point, Tom?
Yeah, I probably know as much as you on that. I think the conversation has happened in terms of, this is a train station, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the conversations happen. I guess as that happens, then the demand is even higher than it was before. From my side, anything to improve the visitor experience in terms of getting up to Anfield, I think it's a welcome thing. But no, I haven't got any updates on that today, unfortunately.
Thanks, Tom. I mean, I think one of the things that will come from COVID-19 as our response to it is actually transport across the city and the city region will change over time. So I think that's certainly something to keep a watch on, but of course that's something for the combined authority and Steve Rother, and perhaps we'll get him on the call to ask that question. Somebody has asked about the bike to work scheme. If a current employer doesn't support this, again, I would say ask your employer to support it, but it doesn't cost the employer anything to do that. But again, we can provide some further information on the bike to work scheme. I know Tom can answer on that.
Yeah, Bill, no, it's something we're in just early discussions about, at the moment, is we are just off all the new proposed cycle paths, and football stadia have never really been, I had many kind of cycle provisions there, but it's something that I'm going to look to explore internally. There's going to be more people, I think, who are going to want to cycle to attractions. So, we want to see if we can put provisions in place for that as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Tom. Yeah, so we'll certainly pick up on that. Bike to Work is one of the main companies for Bike to Work is based here in Liverpool. So we will ask them the question about how they can perhaps provide greater connectivity into that scheme and how we can get more employers to connect to it. Of course, there is a big problem at this moment in time, is the amount of bikes that are available for people to buy, because there's been a rapid uptake in bikes. We know the new cycle routes are being proposed. Paul Smith, if I can just come back to you about coach travel and coaches in the city. You sit on LVEN alongside myself and represent the coach element of our visitor economy in the city. And I know you've had direct discussions on coaches, and we do know that there has been an issue around secure parking. It's something that we are working hard to address. Coach travel is a very important part of our visitor economy. We know that, particularly for our hotels with midweek bookings, are certainly the impact on coach travel. And we've seen some very high profile coach operators that are failing. So Paul, any comments on coach travel at this moment in time?
Yeah, as you say, we were working very hard to try and get secure coach parking before the lockdown. It hasn't moved on a huge amount in the last 3 months. And I think that the other slightly complicating factor with this is that I think the core demographic for a lot of kind of coach travel in this country is the over 60s, the over 65s. And certainly the bookings that I've seen from our coming to the Cathedral from coach companies have been kind of postponing or cancelling to the end of the year, because when they're dealing with the over 65s, and a lot of those people don't want to travel. They certainly don't want to travel in kind of close proximity to other people at this particular moment in time. It is an absolutely critical part of the visitor economy. I suspect because of the demographic, but also partly because of the complication in bringing back provision. Whether it'll be the biggest priority, I don't know. It needs to be a big priority for the city, but and I'm hoping it will be, but there's no real movement in the last 2-3 months on it.
Oh, thanks, Paul. And yes, and it's certainly as part of LVEN's work, we very much understand the importance of coach travel to our city, and we long for that to be returned, but clearly that will only come back as social distancing measures improve, particularly because the demographics of a lot of the coach market is the age group that are particularly vulnerable to COVID. So just to say, we're working hard on that, and we will do all we can to ensure that not only does the city retain its coach-friendly status, but we can encourage and re-energize that market as the rest of our visitor economy is re-energized in time to come. There has been a question again also about, for those of you who have space to host events, when are you expected to start large-scale events. Again, clearly the safety measures are the most important things about all of these. So, Chris, do you want to pick up on that? Is anybody here? I mean, I think the question, although not too sure who it's come from, is about those sort of major events. And if you've got large space, I mean, the Cathedral is a case in point, Paul. You have everything from corporate dinners with 1,000 people sitting down to cream classics with 2,500 people in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the corporate market, I mean, most of our corporate bookings are kind of, well, there's a few that are tentative still in the autumn. Certainly the corporate bookings for the next month or so are kind of are cancelled by and large. I think it's kind of, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I think that I don't even see 2021 is not going to be as full of those kind of corporate bookings as previous years has been. So, I mean, our view is, because a lot of the market's going to be quite domestic for the next year or two anyway, that we will focus probably more on the art installations and those kind of things for the next year or two, and hopefully with some kind of corporate bookings in there as well. But I mean, but the corporate bookings have been very, very good for us in the last few years, and I think there's a general kind of jitteriness about kind of bringing some of those things back because of social distancing. I mean, anyone who's been to any of those dinners knows it's very, very difficult to do social distancing at 1,000 people dinner. It can't be done really. So we're kind of hoping that will come back in the medium to longer term. But I think we're reevaluating our strategy and looking at kind of more different kind of cultural things to take the place of some of those corporate bookings.
Thanks.
I think, Bill, I think this is a really important one, I think, in terms of getting effective guidelines from government about what we can and can't do, because at the moment, with having no guidelines around events at all, whether it be for 20 people, never mind 2,500, what's happening basically is there's no inquiries coming in. So businesses are sitting there, and we know there are companies out there who necessarily want to arrange a meeting or want to arrange an event, can't do so because they've got no confidence in understanding that the place will be able to accommodate it, they will be able to fulfill it, and if they did do that and it didn't go ahead, would they get their money back? So I think we've seen this in Spain and Italy. They've started very small. They started saying you can have events from 30 to 40 people. And then as confidence returns, you can start to move forward. And we really need that. We need that real rifle shot from government to basically begin to break down this, what we can and can't do into sizable chunks that businesses can start reacting to and can start to put their plans in place for. And I'm pretty sure that the major events, and Tom will know that in terms of when we can get back to welcoming crowds back into football grounds as an example, probably a fair way away. But I think we are being basically hampered badly by the inability to be able to start opening up the opportunities for the hospitality and tourism sector by this lack of information. And I'm really hoping that that will start to break through a little bit more clearer. Hopefully probably from the 15th. And it's a matter, we talked about it in a fair amount of detail, didn't we, with Kate Nichols from UK Hospitality a couple of weeks ago.
Thanks, Chris. There's a question from Colin, the chair of the St. John's Market Traders, really about wearing face coverings in the city centre. We know that public transport now, anybody coming in on public transport, it's a mandatory to wear a face covering coming in, but whether retailers are considering that. James, perhaps if you could just respond to that. I know we're waiting for government guidance on that, and there's no set across Liverpool that if you come into a store you should wear a face covering. But what's your view on that, James? If you're muted, James.
Sorry, James, you unmute yourself and try.
Beg your pardon. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, we're not making it mandatory that our customers wear face masks when coming into the store. Our colleagues have been issued with clear face visors that they're welcome to wear as they should, and a number of our customers, quite a large number of our customers, are choosing to come into the store to wear them. We do actually sell face masks as part of our product range now, and we have great stocks of those too. But we are leaving that to the customer's own discretion as to whether they choose to wear one or not at this stage. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to see how Marks and Spencers are offering that service to their customers. And clearly, the Love Your Liverpool website is not just it is actually the central place where retailers are working together on that. So if that situation changes, if government guidelines come in on that, and then certainly you will see that within Liverpool as a whole. Likewise, there was another question about temperature testing. And temperature testing is not something that I understand is generally being considered across the city. It's not being considered, certainly within retail. There have been some examples of it, perhaps being considered in restaurants and hospitality, but again, there is not really a general indication that it is of benefit to you, other than from I suppose the reassurance that it might provide somebody. Paula Brennan's asked a question about a visitor management app, and perhaps if you can just direct that to Marketing Liverpool, and we can look at that offline really at this stage. But it's a great idea that an app to connect the city together. And Mark Devanzo at Everyman in Playhouse, and it is discretion for staff over whether to wear face masks. And again, it's about providing that reassurance. And if Steve is still on the call, Steve, the research that you undertook, did that pick up on face coverings? And
yeah, it did. It was quite interesting actually, but the big difference between wave 1 and wave 2. So wave 1 was done towards the end of April, and we got quite a lot of pushback from potential visitors at that point, particularly about them having to wear face masks. But then by the time wave 2 came along, which was 13th to 18th of May, that had changed quite a lot, because there was a lot more chat in the media and from the government about the wearing of face masks and the coverings, and people are now much more comfortable with it, and there was much less pushback. So I think that's evidence that not to feel too shy at coming forward in making people wear face coverings at least. It should give people confidence.
So it provides that reassurance and confidence. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thanks for that coming in. Thanks for everybody's contribution today. I know we're coming towards the end of the hour. Is there any further questions at all anywhere? Alvaro, anything?
I think just Paul wanted to give an update on that exhibition in the Cathedral, Paul.
Yeah, we were hoping to do Peace Doves this year. This was going to be our big kind of our art installation over the WIP period. And obviously, I mean, because the Gaia exhibition attracted 200,000 people in 4 weeks this time last year. So we just thought, from a kind of safety point of view, we couldn't do Peace Doves. And it's not, we are going to bring Peace Doves into 2021. So the plan is hopefully from end of March till beginning of June is the current thinking, to bring Peace Doves. So it'll be here for longer next year. I mean, we're still working through some of the detail, but we have a slot booked in to do Peace Doves in 2021, and it will be for longer. And we really want to do it. I think reflecting on peace and those kind of issues is kind of seems to be far more important even than when we commissioned the work for the Cathedral. So we will bring it to the Cathedral in 2021.
Great, thanks for that. Yeah, okay, excellent. Thanks for that. And I think we've responded to everybody else's questions. Apart from one question for Tom, I'm not too sure a 2-meter alarm was anything you indicated.
Yeah, it was just with.
All right. So how does it work?
Well, it's work in progress at the moment, but there's software which can be developed. So everyone has a multimedia device which they take around.
Right, yeah.
And I say it's simple, but it's so we're looking at it. It's not as easy as I probably made out in order for it to be installed on the software, but it's something that we're looking at.
Great, thanks for that. Excellent. So our next webinar is planned for 2 weeks today, and we're very much going to be focusing then on the Liverpool Without Walls concept, because we should be live by then. We are working hard behind the scenes to get that ready, but so please do keep sending your questions in. If you've got anything, then obviously Marketing Liverpool ourselves. Love Your Liverpool is the place to go to for frequently asked questions on retail. And keep watching the social media, and thank you for joining us today. And